This is Mike Dilk of Relax Back UK.
Hi, and thank you for joining me, Mike Dilk, on the Relax Back UK show here on UK Health Radio, your global real feel-good radio station. This week, I speak with Dietician Helen Bond.
If we look after this gut community, our microbiome, then it might potentially look after our immune system. It might look after things like bowel conditions like irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disease, and even things like an obesity, and also looking after our mood. So all good benefits.
We learn what our gut can do for us, but also what we can do for it. Now, it's back to school for lots of children at round about this time. It's my children's first day today. Teachers like to set the essay, what did you do during the school holidays? So I thought I'd tell you what we got up to.
We kayaked into a little cave and it's absolutely fantastic. And now we're just coming out. It's kind of narrow to get out.
We went sea kayaking in South Devon with a company called Sea Kayak Devon. It was great fun and I really do recommend it. Then, as well as back to school, it's often back to work for us grown-ups as well. And for many, this might mean working at a desk. So here's some advice about this.
What we want to avoid is static sitting and static standing. So the best thing to do is when you are standing is use an anti-fatigue mat if you can, because or something that involves foot movement. There are various other iterations, wobble board.
We get some advice on how to keep moving from Gavin Bradley of Active Working.
Relax Back UK is run by my daddy.
So the first topic today is guts and the microbiome with dietitian Helen Bond. But first of all, I just want to go slightly off topic a little bit. I'm reading a book which I'm thoroughly enjoying by Michael Palin about his travels in the Himalaya. This is from a few years ago, I think, actually. And he was traveling in India. And it's kind of most people who travel in India, I think, it's certainly my experience, sooner or later, you do end up talking about your guts. and because quite often you get sick. I got sick when I travelled in India. And he was travelling from Amritsar to Chandigarh, and he noticed that there were quite a few, he called them behavioural improvement programs from the government at that time. And he talks about one, and I just want to read it. This morning, I see that the government is tackling the vexed subject of night soil or open-air defecation, which is such a feature of life here. A series of adverts in the morning papers appeals to people to stop easing themselves in public places. Easing oneself is a new euphemism to me, but I rather like it and I will use it wherever possible. So maybe I'm going to take a page literally out of Michael Palin's book and say that the next subject is about guts and the microbiome and possibly easing oneself. And I spoke with Helen Bond, dietitian, and I first asked her what a dietitian is and what do they do?
Oh, a registered dietitian is a person who is trained to degree level to talk about the importance of nutrition and its relationship to health. Right.
And that's important to say you're a registered dietitian.
It is.
I think, as opposed to a nutritionist, because I'm a civil engineer, but I could call myself a nutritionist and get away with it, couldn't I?
You could, but registered dietitian is a protected title, and you have to be a member of the British Dietetic Association to call yourself a registered dietitian.
Good. All right. I think that's worth saying. Right. So we're talking about guts, and not just guts, but microbiome. So again, Helen, what is our microbiome?
Well, gosh, who knew that talking about guts and our microbiome would be so popular, which it is at the moment. I think anyone that talks about wanting to ease their gut symptom has actually heard of the term the gut microbiome and the importance of our gut bacteria. But for those that are not in the know, it is our internal gut bug community. So it's the trillions of microbes that live in our gut. So it's anything from fungi to bacteria bacteria to parasites and viruses that live in our gut. And they have thousands of different functions. They harvest energy from our food. They produce vitamins, like things like biotin, which is a B vitamin, and also vitamin K. They produce hormones, including our happy hormone, and they help in keeping our gut healthy. Scientists really now believe that if we look after our gut and its gut bug community, then it'll look after more than just our digestive discomfort, which affects 40% of the UK population. And there's potentially wide-ranging health benefits. We're learning more and more, but the science is slowly starting to stack up. That's showing if we look after this gut community, our microbiome, that it might potentially look after our immune system. It might look after things like bowel conditions like irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disease, and even things like an obesity, and also looking after our mood. So all good benefits.
Right. So the microbiome does a lot for us. So it only seems fair to ask the question, what can we do for it?
Well, we need to look after it, and we need to treat it well and feed it with good, wholesome food which will nourish all of our gut microbes from the inside. And I think at this time of the year with the summer out there, you think, great, we should be looking after and enjoying lots of wholesome foods and salads and grains and so forth. But sadly, often things go out of the window. We go abroad. It's quite stressful getting away. We also have party. We have lack of sleep. We go to festivals, what my children do. And often we suffer from travel tummy bugs and things like that.
Don't you go to festivals?
Not at my age, no. I don't think my children would like that. But a lot of people do.
I think we should all go with our children to festivals. I think we should start. Anyway, this is nothing to do with microbiomes. But anyway.
But it does take its toll. It does take its toll. Lack of sleep, stress, even just to get on holiday before you can relax on holiday. And having a kind of, lots of barbecues, which we all adore. But often they kind of tend to be low in fibre, quite highly processed foods, things like burgers and sausages and everything. And often they contain things like additives and things like emulsifiers and even things like sweeteners in drinks and things like that. And they can all hit the gut microbiome quite hard, making us potentially more susceptible to gut issues. So we really need to treat our gut microbiome with care and nourish it and feed it with all the good things that will help it grow and, thrive on the gut community there.
So do we really know then that this kind of processed food and alcohol is bad for our microbiome? Is that a scientific fact?
Well, research is showing that if you have a poor diet, if your diet is not very diverse, it doesn't include very many plant foods, then your diversity of those gut microbes, and diversity is really important, all the different microbes that are living there, is much reduced. So we need to increase the diversity of those gut microbes, and having a well-balanced diet that includes a range of healthy foods from fruits and vegetables, whole grains, fibre-rich foods, they actually nurture the gut and the gut microbiome and actually feed it from the inside. So that's why it's important to actually have a wholesome diet.
Okay, so based on that, does it follow on that vegetarians might have a healthier gut, a healthier microbiome?
Well, if they're including lots of plant foods, we know plant foods are actually our gut's friend. Fellow dietitians actually say that, we should have about 30 different types of plant foods in our diet to kind of help increase the diversity of our gut. So when you think about vegetarian, yes, you don't have to become vegetarian, even vegan, which is the latest trend at the moment. But certainly meat should be less as important in our diet. We should embrace those plant foods, embrace things like whole grains, rich in fibre, even nuts and pulses, legumes, nuts and seeds as well. These all help in terms of increase the diversity of our gut microbes and are good for our overall health and well-being as well.
Well, absolutely. If you don't feel like your gut is causing you trouble, you're just in a better mood, aren't you? At least I am.
Well, Well, that's it. But like I said, it's not always people that think that you have gut symptoms. You know, there's no universal definition of good gut health. But we know that poor gut health, often people do have symptoms, you know, things like constipation and diarrhea and bloating and distension. But just because you don't have those doesn't necessarily mean that your gut's in a healthy place. And I think really we should be looking at the foods that we're eating to help nurture our gut microbiome. Just because we can't see it, we can't see all the thousands of jobs it's doing there and actually how it affects us.
So how can Joe Public know? So if I feel fine, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not constantly running to the loo or I'm not constipated. By definition then, I would have thought I've got a healthy gut, but you're saying that might not be the case. How can I know?
Well, like I said, over the last decade, we're learning more about the role that these gut microbes work in our body, and they have quite far-reaching potential health benefits. So, yes, you might not have strictly gut symptoms like you've just mentioned, but you might have put on weight, you might be slightly in low mood, you might have problems sleeping, and these could all be linked to our gut health and the diversity of our microbes in our gut. So just because you don't have gut symptoms, it doesn't mean that your gut community is actually very healthy. And it really does need nurturing. And like I said, the science is in its early stages, but we are learning more and more about the role of these microbes and how it affects our overall health and well-being.
Okay. What about, say, if I think, all right, I'm going to see if I can nudge my gut, my gut community into being happy, and I start eating a load of yogurt and stuff like this. Because, you know, in the media you hear, have some yogurt because that's got lots of bacteria in it already and it will nudge your gut into happiness. Is that really true?
Well, yogurt is one of the older kind of fermented foods are actually quite good in terms of they supply bacteria, strains of bacteria like bifidobacterium. So yogurt is one of the old traditional fermented food. Now things like kefir, kombucha, all of the kind of new strains of kind of fermented foods are coming out. Even things like sauerkraut, which is the German cabbage, and kimchi, which is the Korean cabbage. These are all types of foods which are beneficial for our gut. They do supply probiotics. Not the biggest dose, but they supply lots of other things that are beneficial in terms of our diet as well. So they will help nurture your gut. But diversity is key with regards to diet. I've already mentioned in terms of the variety of different plant foods out there and diversifying your diet and make sure it is wholesome. But encouraging you to get out of a rut. Us Brits like quite boring traditional foods day in, day out, but diversify your diet and make sure you're including new foods in there because your gut microbes will definitely thank you for that.
Okay. And are there any particular foods that you might suggest people to gravitate towards? You suggested lots of different sorts, but as far as being probiotics, that's another word that is kind of mentioned a lot we haven't spoken about yet.
It is.
What is that?
Well, we'll come back to that. First of all, I think it's important to say there's no superfood for gut health and there's no foods that are directly bad for gut health. It's a balance of your overall diet. So the more whole foods, nutritious foods that you're in and the more wide-ranging foods that you can have, that is your best advantage in terms of making sure your microbes are quite diverse and healthy in your gut. But coming back to your earlier question with regards to probiotics, because it is a term that people banter about and you think, well, what is it? People do refer them to as the gut, the good guys. They're gut-friendly bacteria. So they add healthy bacteria into our gut. And they have, the popularity of probiotics has increased significantly, certainly over the last few years. But I think it's also important to say we're still learning about, in terms of the research about probiotics, and they are not all created equally. The evidence shows that different strains of probiotics can have different effects on our gut. And it's the spectrum of microbes that is also important. So when you're looking at having a probiotic to choose, I would always say check with your doctor before you're having it, especially if you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding, and also if you have a weakened immune system, and look at the different types of probiotics out there. Choose one with a higher dose and also multi-strain as well to ensure that it gets through the harsh environment of the stomach.
A multi-strain, okay. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, it's not just got one single strain. So multi-strain, often things that are out there, the probiotics that have multi-strains have different varieties of bacteria, like the bifidobacterium and the lactobacillus bacteria, which are already colonized within our gut. But if you have multi-strains, we don't know which particular strains have benefits within our body at the moment. So the more strains that you can have and the higher the dosage of those, the more likely they will get through, like I said, the harsh environment of the stomach and will reach your gut intact, where they can help in terms of colonizing the bacteria in there.
Okay, all right. So there's some good advice there. If people want to take this a little bit further, what resources might you suggest for some, good, serious, honest advice on this stuff?
Well, I think always is the question. For tailored advice, you should always go to your doctor. If you're suffering from, bloating, distension, if you're passing blood, or if you're losing weight, or you've had altered bowel habits for the last, 6 weeks, always check it out of your doctor for tailored advice. They can do blood tests. They can even send you for a stool sample to rule out any nasties. So that is the first port of call. Then also have a look at the NHS Choices website. It's got lots of information if you're suffering from gastrointestinal discomfort, and check out as a dietitian, the British Dietetic Association website, which also has lots of facts out there for whether you're interested in probiotics, whether you're interested in fibre and increasing your fruits and vegetables. We should all be increasing our fruits and vegetables, and also carbohydrates. Look out there and get some information that's from a trusted source. Excellent.
All right, Helen, look, very useful. Thank you very much indeed for chatting.
Lovely to speak to you.
That's back UK. Run by my daddy.
I really want to tell you about my holiday sea kayaking experience. And also, to make it relevant to musculoskeletal health, I pass on what our guide told us about paddling to make it a little bit easier. So in a kayak, that's a double-bladed paddle as opposed to a single blade for a canoe. And actually, in the recordings that come, you'll hear me being berated by the rest of my family for mixing the two up. We went in a kayak, which is something you sit in, and you've got a double-bladed paddle. So you put the paddle in one side, take it out, and then put it in the other side. So our guide said, when the blade's in the water, think about pushing with your opposite arm as well as pulling with your arm closest to the blade in the water. And also, you can engage your core and use your core muscles for some extra power. Although I have to say, the guide wasn't really too worried about the way we paddled. He just wanted us to have a fun time, and we certainly did. The guide took us to some great places. We went into a sea cave. We went to some lovely beaches that you could only get to from the sea. In fact, we camped. The night we camped was on a beach that you could only get at from the sea. It was very difficult to get at from the land side. We did it with Sea Kayak Devon from Dartmouth, although I believe other suppliers are certainly available. So I'm going to just play you some of the recordings that I made during our adventure.
Right, we've just spent the last hour packing a whole load of stuff for an overnight stay into 2 double canoes because we're in Dartmouth and we are going sea kayaking. And it was a bit of a struggle because although there's a lot of stuff you can get in these kayaks, we've brought loads of stuff, and the people who are organising it have brought loads of food, so I think we're going to be well catered for. I don't think I'm going to be able to say much when we're actually going along because it's kind of wet and I don't want to get my phone wet. But I'm going to keep you updated as we go along. Okay, I'm just going to have a few words from the family before we get going.
No. Shut up! Let's get on the water.
Right, we've just paddled up the Dart estuary and it was really smooth. Came out into the sea. I'm making a podcast. I'm being looked at by my fellow paddlers like I'm a fruitcake. And we've just come kind of into the sea and it's still really flat actually. It's lovely. And we're looking at a cave. We might be about to paddle through a cave. I'll keep you posted. Right, we've canoed into a little cave and we've kayaked into a little cave and it's absolutely fantastic. And now we're just coming out. It's kind of narrow to get out, but we're going to get out. I have to put the phone down so we can get out, but this is really exciting. So we've finished kayaking for the day, and we did about 13 kilometres, and we've just come back to our beach, and Zoran's very embarrassed that I'm talking into my phone. And it's just us on this lovely little beach. So that's 2 families of 4 and 2 instructors. We set up tents, tiny little tents, and we had to get everything out of the little storage areas on the kayaks, and it was quite an effort putting the sleeping bags and stuffing the mattresses and everything in. So it was quite an effort getting them out. But anyway, we've managed that, and it's started to rain a little bit. But on the last bit, we saw a seal. A seal bobbed up and came to say hello, which was really nice. I'm hoping this rain's going to stop, because this is going to be an absolutely lovely spot just to have dinner and just a nice relaxing evening. Although having said that, it's just started to rain a bit harder. All right, I'll tell you how it goes a bit later.
I'm glad to be able to tell you that yes, the rain did stop. It ended up being a lovely campsite. We had a campfire and a barbecue. We roasted marshmallows and all that sort of thing. And the next day we kayaked a little bit more and made our way back up the dark estuary and finished up after really what was a real fun couple of days. So shortly we're going to hear from Gavin Bradley about keeping moving. Now we're back at work, back in the office.
Relax back UK is run by my daddy.
Next guest is Gavin Bradley of Active Working, and he talks about how to keep moving when you're in the office, and also why it's a good idea to keep moving when you're in the office. And I started off by asking him why he first set up the company Active Working.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. Well, it's 5 years ago now when we first set up Active Working as a community interest company, and basically to draw attention to the issues around prolonged and sedentary working. So under the Active Working community interest company, we run the Get Britain Standing campaign. We run the Active Working Summit, which is for thought leaders, and it's a global event to showcase research and just basic experiences around trying to change sedentary environments into more active environments. And then finally, we run the On Your Feet Day, which is an annual day at the end of February for everyone anywhere to get on your feet in a fun way, to avoid sitting and standing as much as possible.
Okay, so part of all this is getting people to stand up in the office. So traditionally people sit down at their desk in the office. Coming in now and getting more and more popular, I think probably, are sit-stand desks. They're certainly popular in other countries, but are these things getting popular in the UK?
They are, from a very small base. I think when we started the campaign 5 years ago, it certainly would have been less than 1% of office workers would have had access to a sit-stand desk. That's probably around 4, maybe 5% now, 5 years later. So it is growing rapidly, but it's still nowhere near as high as it could or should be. In Denmark, it's over 90%. Over 90% of office workers have a sit-stand desk. And there, it's actually the law. If your employer requires you to sit for more than 2 hours a day, you must be provided with a sit-stand desk. You cannot be expected to sit for prolonged periods at work in Denmark.
Okay. So we should get right back to basics here. A sit-stand desk is something that enables you to sit and work on your computer or on your phone or whatever it may be, but also stand doing exactly the same thing.
Correct. And there's various iterations. They come in all shapes and sizes.
So it could actually be a box on your regular desk.
If you're going to start somewhere, make it up DIY yourself. It's important that you take every opportunity to do what you can with whatever budget and whatever environment you are. But obviously, standing at a box, you need to make sure that your wrists are at the same level or slightly below your elbows. So that's the basic ergonomic requirement, that your wrists are not more than an inch below your elbows and certainly not above your elbows.
Right. And so, of course, you can get these lovely electric desks. In fact, I'm at one now. There you go. I don't know if you can hear that. It's going up and down. I love them. So you can get these electric desks where at the touch of the button, you can be sitting or standing, which is probably a bit more efficient than a cardboard box.
Correct. I think that's where we will all end up, Mike, but obviously it's a huge investment. So there are various solutions in between. But in Denmark, for example, that's what everyone pretty much has, is an electric desk.
Right.
And by the way, these things are coming down rapidly in price. So since we started the campaign, the average price was around £1,000. You can now get electric desks for, well, around 500 or less even.
Yeah.
So
it's not that much money in the scheme of things.
Well, for a large employer who's looking at the wellness side and productivity side of their employee base, it's actually a very low cost in terms of the benefits it actually delivers.
Yeah. So these things have been used in other countries, and particularly Nordic countries, you suggested. Why do you think we're just a bit slow on the uptake in the UK?
Very good question. I think the Nordic companies got there first for different reasons. They didn't actually know about the broader health issues concerning prolonged and sedentary working. They actually got there because of bad posture in the 90s, and it became much more standing is better for your posture. That was the basic proviso. It's only in the last 10 years that all the health risks associated with long sitting, which relate to mental health, cancers, heart disease, and obviously back care, and chronic back pain. It's only that now that these issues, and indeed length of life, is that these issues are now being properly researched and getting the correct investment. But these things take years. Research programs don't happen over months. They happen over years, series of years, even decades, so that people can measure these things properly.
Right.
So I think the question was always here, was it 5 years ago, certainly, and it's less. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? We think you could be right, but where's the evidence? And I think now the evidence base is growing. People feel more comfortable talking about the issues around sedentary working. 5 years ago, they didn't. Denmark, Scandinavia got there for posture reasons 20 years ago.
Okay. All right. So we like evidence, I suppose. Maybe that would be one reason.
We like evidence, but it's the same in the US, which is slightly ahead of us. Same in Canada, slightly ahead of us. Australia also slightly ahead of us. They're all about 2 years ahead of us because they've invested a lot in the evidence base too. So and Germany as well. But you look at countries, there are countries which are well behind us. France, the southern Italy, Spain. We're 5 years ahead of those countries, if not more. So it's also I guess it's like all changes, it requires also behavior change, and behavior change is something that takes years if it's a difficult thing to initiate.
That's extremely difficult. Yes, certainly. You mentioned some health benefits, but what about keeping us all a bit more efficient when we're actually at our desk? I mean, I use a sit-stand desk, and I am sure that I'm more productive when I'm using it. Is there any? We were talking about evidence. Any evidence that it helps to keep us a bit more efficient, stops the doze after lunch, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of headlines. Yeah, the evidence really depends on what function you're doing, but cognitive functions, where you have to, definitely there's evidence that's come out of University of Texas, which talks about between 20 to 30% improvement in cognitive functions. But it really depends. I mean, it's only now really that people are starting to invest in the productivity changes. Previously, and up until now, a lot of it's been health benefits of reducing sitting and improving standing. But the fundamentals really would say, and it's quite self-explanatory, is that you are better standing after meal times because that helps even out your blood sugar levels and avoids a pent-up of blood sugar in the late afternoon where people get lethargic or tired as a result. You're better standing when you're doing routine tasks or on the phone. You're better standing by going through inbox, going through setting up diary, stuff that doesn't require a huge amount of intensity. If you're having to go through spreadsheets or if you're having to recheck whether you've written that email to your boss asking for promotion very carefully, justifying, then you're better sitting. So it really depends on the intensity of the task you're doing and obviously the type of work. So, but the core message is mix it up. You should not do prolonged standing. You should not do prolonged sitting. It's your next position is your best position.
Right. So keep moving. Keep moving.
Keep moving. Keep moving. Yeah.
So if you're standing at your desk, should we be standing still? Because actually standing is quite sedentary, isn't it?
Correct.
Standing.
Static. Standing is not sedentary, it's static. So
static,
what we want to avoid is static sitting and static standing. So the best thing to do is when you are standing is use an anti-fatigue mat if you can, because or something that involves foot movement. There are various other iterations, wobble boards or whatever, but or certainly very comfortable footwear. Because what you want to avoid is the static position, and if you're on a mat or something, subconsciously you will move more, and that will activate key muscles in your ankles, which will then help blood circulation to avoid any risk associated with being static.
Because presumably you want to avoid this kind of classic waiting for a bus standing, where you're standing on one leg, your weight's on one leg. It can just. A bad standing posture presumably is as bad as a bad sitting one. Well,
it's not as bad, but sitting is really bad for the back. Standing, leaning on things, it is not good, but it's certainly it's less bad than sitting against the backrest, sitting backwards with the back in the seat position, whereby over a prolonged period of time you do cause yourself very, very poor posture and then back issues. But I don't want to go into too much sort of nuances, but the fundamental thing is that any static positioning for the body is poor. We are designed to move. We're designed to move throughout the day, and that's what we have to think about.
Okay, all right. So as part of this moving, if we're moving while we're standing, you did mention a couple of health advantages. And in fact, you spoke about blood sugar. Can you give a bit more details about how it might help with diabetes and blood sugar? Okay,
so for blood sugar, for example, we recommend, the first hour after mealtime, you should be standing, because it just takes help. By the way, I must confess, I am not medical. I have not got one medical qualification, so please don't.
No, nor am I. I'm a civil engineer.
And I know, but I just don't want. So but basically what enables, and it's not just diabetes, it's everything, if I might say, is that all our organs require activation. Okay, so and just by the strongest muscles, by the way, are in our posterior. There's posterior muscles. They pump things around the body we don't even know about. And that's what triggers various issues regarding relevant medical conditions. But in terms of blood sugars, basically, the muscle group, when we're standing, which is the first gear of activity, okay, people don't think of standing as a physical part of physical activity, but you're already burning twice as many calories as when you're sitting. And if you're hovering or just moving out, you're again doubling again. So all these things means that the engine is ticking over, and then allows the body to start to break down, do its business, do its certain things. So what I can say is that when you are sitting and for prolonged periods, things like metabolism start to sort of dramatically, I won't say close down, but they go down by about 99% after around 90 minutes. So that's where things start to build up and problems start to build up. So it's what we need to make sure is that we don't enter those prolonged periods of sitting, which is basically between 60 and 90 minutes.
Okay. So during that, you mentioned you burn twice as many calories standing as sitting. What's that based on? Have you got any papers that you can quote or send us links on?
James Levine, Professor James Levine, presented at actually one of our summits the metabolic expenditure, the amount of calories you burn doing various activities. So even things like chewing gum, you burn quite a lot of calories as well. But you don't even think about it. Your jaw just going up and down. But it's just all these micro activities we look at, which are incidental, is what has been calculated in terms of calorie burn, and where what is our base point? And our base point is obviously sedentary behavior. So from there, how much more calories can we burn? And that is all it's called the NEAT, non-exogenic calorie transfer. I think, I'm not sure about the T. It's worth looking up. James Levine and the NEAT program, and you'll see it analyzes what calories you burn doing what.
Okay, that's a published paper, is it? I'll put a link to that on my blog.
It's very well established. Yeah, James Levine from the Mayo Clinic in the US, it's the incidental activities that you'll do: hoovering, chewing gum, that sort of thing, standing versus prolonged sitting. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, that sounds absolutely fascinating. I'm gonna have a look at that. So, if people are listening to this and thinking, this is sort of interesting, I'd like to find out more and possibly give it a go. Where can people get a bit more info on not only what standing using a sit-stand desk can do for them, but also some info about sit-stand desks?
Okay. Well, first of all, we recommend people go to the getbritainstanding.org website. There you can familiarize yourselves with all the risks associated with prolonged and excessive sitting, and then understanding the research base behind that, which is quite clearly defined. And then also the best practices and simple things to do with regards to active work. Because it's not all about a desk. Whilst we love the desks, does do reduce sitting by a long period. There are other things we can do, like just going on walking meetings or having standing meetings or using stairs rather than lifts throughout the day.
Yeah, walking to work.
But in terms of desk, that's where you can really knock down your sitting quite substantially. That there's details of all the various solutions on the Get Britain Standing website, and there's some companies which offer free trial as well.
Excellent. All right. I think this is kind of really interesting because I think we are on a cusp of a change of habit for many people. And the habits of a lifetime as well, which, as you said, they can take a while to change, but I think people are starting to change. So it's an interesting time.
It is interesting. I think when I started this 5 years ago, Mike, a lot of people did laugh at the whole concept. In fact, some people were very worried, about me professionally or getting involved in something like this. But
did they think you needed some professional help of a different sort?
Yeah, but it is amazing how something so simple is so powerful. I'm a reasonably healthy individual. One thing I have noticed over the last 5 years is my bad cholesterol level has reduced to very healthy level. And considering that's something that killed my father in his mid 50s, and I'm early 50s, it's something that I've always been aware of. So cholesterol is a huge issue relating to sedentary behavior, and hence the heart disease connection. So I think the more people try it, the more people they realize, wow, it does actually make a difference. It's not some fashion or fad. There is something here, and the more people understand and read up and educate themselves about it, they're even more powerful. Yeah.
All right, I think it's a perfect place to finish. Just a nice place to leave it. To just suggest people to find out a bit more about it. So, Gavin, thank you very much indeed for chatting on the subject.
You're very welcome, Mike. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much to my guests on this week's show, and they were Dietitian Helen Bond and also Gavin Bradley of Active Working. And of course, thank you to you for listening.
That was Mike Dilk of Relax Back UK. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next time.